Greetings all, this is Hairy Nick, back again for another X-Wing list review video. Now, last week we focused on a single pilot for the Rebel faction, something we haven't done in these videos before. Last week was Wolf Warrior, and this week we're going to go over to the Scum faction and take a look at this card here. Asajj Ventress on the Lancer class pursuit craft. One of my favourite pilots ever since she was released. When this wave was being announced and all the ships were being revealed, I actually wasn't that interested in the Lancer. I was far more interested in the fact that Scum was getting their first proper ace platform in the Protectorate Starfighter. So this ship actually flew under the radar for me, and when it came out and I actually started using the various ships available, I was actually gravitating towards this one. We knew going into the release of this ship that it would have a lot of cool sort of tricks and it could interact with the board state in a lot of different ways, but didn't seem to have any amazing symbiosis that made it do a lot of things really efficiently. But the upshot of what happened when it was released was it is just capable of doing so many different things to so many ships. It can punch really hard. It's durable enough. But what really is the clincher for this ship is the control elements it brings to the table. It is a big brawling ship that's capable of taking on Imperial aces and actually controlling them out of the game, which is amazing. It's something that the Scum faction really needed at the time. Basically, at the time that Wave 9 released, if you wanted to take it to like Palp aces and that kind of stuff, you basically were reduced to doing broken stuff with the Jump Master. That was basically Scum's best option back then. When this came out, it really gave the faction a bit more versatility, and it meant that it could take on these lists that it previously really struggled against without having to resort to things like contracted scouts or Dengaroo and stuff like that that's been thoroughly nerfed, and rightly so, since then. Asajj Ventress has Pilot Skill 6, has an EPT, costs 37 points, and reads, at the start of the combat phase, you may choose a ship at range 1 to 2 inside of your mobile firing arc, assign 1 stress token to it. Now, the mobile firing arc, in case you guys aren't aware, is a separate firing arc to your primary. The primary sits on the Lancer just like any other primary in the game. It's that wedge that's directly in front of your ship, but the mobile firing arc is an arc that can move into any one of these 4 quadrants on the base. It can even be overlapping the primary, and basically the mobile firing arc gives you a bit more control. Some of the different cards for this ship actually give you a bonus for getting things inside your mobile firing arc at various ranges depending on which pilot or upgrade card you're using. In the case of Asajj, you have something that's very great and consistent, and this is pretty much the reason that she's almost always the preferred pilot for this craft. She can choose a ship only at range 1 to 2 at the start of combat and assign a stress to them. There is no extra hoops you need to jump through. You don't have to overlap the primary and the secondary arc like you do with Ketsu Onyo, for example. You don't even have to hit the ship. You just give them a stress. And this has proven to be something really potent. Usually in the game of X-Wing, to give your opponent a stress token, you have to jump through some kind of hoop. And although having to move the arc around sometimes can be a bit difficult, it is, relatively speaking, in the game of X-Wing, a very simple and straightforward way to give your opponent stress tokens. And just one more thing before we jump into the list, I want to talk about the title that goes along with this ship, because again, it's a very popular choice on Asajj Ventress. For 3 points, you get the Shadowcaster title. This card grants you the ability to assign an opponent's ship a tractor token after you hit them inside your mobile firing arc at range 1 to 2. And the obvious thing about this is it has very much the same restrictions as Asajj's pilot card, so they often go together quite nicely. The only difference between this card and Asajj's pilot ability is you actually have to hit the attack in order to assign the token. The great thing about this though is tractor tokens are very, very powerful, especially if Asajj is shooting first and you give your other ships a chance to sink more red dice in your opponent's ship and taking advantage of the fact that your opponent's rolling 1 less green dice. Anyway, I've rambled long enough about this ship. Let's actually take a look at the builds that you guys have submitted. This one is by T. Robertson 47. It includes Asajj Ventress, Captain Justero, and Thweek. So we've got a bit of action from the Guns for Hire pack as well. Asajj has Veteran Instincts, Ketsu Onyo, Reach Cargo Chute, Gyroscopic Targeting, and the Shadowcaster title. Captain Justero has Harpoon Missiles, Black Market Slicer Tool, Pulsed Ray Shield, and Vaxai. Thweek has Pulsed Ray Shield and Star Viper Mark II. And I also want to point out that this user submitted this list as a response to the video I made about where to start with the Scum faction. And the reason that this is a very interesting list is because you only need to buy the two major things that I recommend for the Scum faction. The Lancer class Pursuit Craft pack and the Guns for Hire pack. Every upgrade you see here in front of you is available in those packs. And from that point of view, I think this is probably one of the best things you could be doing with these ships. An obvious upgrade here is putting auto thrusters on Thweek instead of the pulse ray shield. It's just pretty much a straight up better card. However, you would have to buy the Star Upper pack separately. I will say though, T Robertson 47, if you are watching, I would recommend that as one of your next purchases because the Star Upper pack also gives you Guri as well as 2 copies of auto thrusters, and all of that together makes the pack very, very desirable for the kind of stuff you're trying to build here. There's not really a whole lot more to say. I mean, honestly, this is not the kind of list I'd usually put Ketsu Onyo in, only because you only really have one ship that's using tractor tokens. Her value kind of goes up if you have at least 1 or 2 other ships, like say a quad jumper with a space dive tractor array, but at least she is getting value here, and I can see why you've taken her. You could use IG-88D, which also came in the Lancer pack, but obviously you get no value out of that because you have no IG-2000 on your list. The rigged cargo chute is a great choice on Asajj because it is yet another way that you can give your opponent stress tokens. And if you can manage to give your opponent 2 stress tokens, it means that they're completely locked out of taking actions the next turn, even if they do another green maneuver. Harpoon Missile is absolutely the right choice in Justero. I don't think there's any other ordnance this guy wants to take. Black Market Slicer Tool might prove a bit awkward simply because you want to be using your actions to take target locks. You've got no other way of taking actions on this list. Justero actually has no EPTs, and one of the first things I recommend is looking at things like Veteran Instincts on Justero, maybe Push the Limits or Crack Shot or something like that, but obviously things you don't get in this pack. So again, if you think of any other packs to buy, I would recommend also the Kirax Fighter because you get a copy of Crack Shot in that pack, and Crack Shot is free with the Vaxi title. It would be a great include here on this list. It's also worth pointing out that if you had access to these upgrades, you could take munitions failsafe and guidance chips on the Kirax Fighter here, and they wouldn't cost you anything. Guidance chips means you can get a bit more consistency out of your harpoon missiles. The critical that you get off this can't be used to trigger harpoon missiles because you can't assign the condition and use the condition within the same turn, but it's still nice to have a bit more consistency, and look, it costs 0 points, so who cares. Munitions failsafe is a pretty average card, but it's absolutely free. And just in case you happen to miss with the harpoon missiles, somehow you get it back and you get to use it again the next turn, which could have value in some games. Again, these cards are free, so you may as well include them if you can get your hands on them. I know they're not included in the Guns for Hire pack, but these are some cards to look out for. If you can access these cards somehow, they're going to give your list a little bit more consistency. But overall, I like the list, and I like how it simply uses the upgrades that are available in these packs, and everything just seems to be decent value. It's definitely not the best thing you can be doing with these ships, but if you only own these 2 packs, you've done pretty well. Alright, let's move on to the next list here. We have Terrible Scum List by V-Song. Now, before I continue, I want to point out that I did not name this list. V-Song, in the comment section when you posted this list to me, you called it Terrible Scum List. And I just want to say, this is not a terrible list. Don't be so hard on yourself. I actually quite like this. What we have here is Fen Rao, a contracted scout, and Asajj Ventress. Fen Rao has Push the Limits, Auto Thrusters, and Concord Dawn Protector. The contracted scout has Zuckuss, and Asajj Ventress has Adaptability, Lats Razi, and the Black Market Slicer Tools. So whenever we have these 3 ships together, we really have to shave down the points to make sure they fit in. And from that point of view, the Scout and Asajj Ventress aren't really getting a whole heap of value. They're not really stacking up a lot of upgrades like they usually would. But having said that, I do like the upgrades that we've taken. They just seem nice and basic and efficient. Fen Rao, Push the Limits, Auto Thrusters, Concord Dawn Protector. No complaints from me there. This is basically my preferred way of building Fen Rao. A lot of people I've seen use Fearlessness or a tiny Mind Link. I just think overall for consistency, game after game after game, Push the Limits is the best option on him. He is a disgustingly powerful ace. He may not be the most defensive ace like your Sunta Fair Lawyer Inquisitor, but man, is he explosive. He's such a cool ship in the game. Now, the contracted scout with Zuckuss, I'm not really convinced that this is probably the best thing you could be doing with Zuckuss or the Contracted Scout here. Now, Zuckuss has been nerfed, so you can't just use him turn after turn after turn. You can only use him when you have no stress tokens. And really, the best way to capitalize off him is a ship with a big attack that's going to sink a lot of red dice. And the Scout's only got 2 red dice, so it's probably not going to be the case. Zuckuss was best used on ships like Bosk or the Transocean Slaver or Dengar that have a natural 3 red dice, and those builds always include a way of making sure that those attack dice are very, very efficient. 2 red dice with no way of boosting your attacks is not the best situation for Zuckuss here. Sure, there might be a situation where you get like 2 criticals and you manage to sneak through a critical with Zuckuss, but it's very, very unlikely. Honestly, I think for 1 point on a Contracted Scout, you cannot go past Intelligence Agent. This card is nuts. It's just so good on a ship that has a low pilot skill and a barrel roll. It's going to help you block and block effectively, and that's going to make Fen Rao so happy because you're going to be able to lock down your opponent's ability to fly, and that's going to mean he can capitalize on it and sink 5 red dice at range 1 into a ship that you've blocked. It's definitely what you want to be doing here. I kind of think that Zuckuss might be okay situationally, but Intelligence Agent is going to give you a lot of love game after game. Now, scrolling down here to Asajj. I like what you're doing here. I like Black Market's last tool, and I like Lat's Razzie. Adaptability is a free upgrade, so that's cool. You could consider taking like Trick Shot, but you do you in this scenario. I just will call up one thing. You've got Lat's Razzie and the Black Market Slice tool. And these are both ways of capitalizing off of your stress tokens. The problem here is Asajj can only assign 1 stress token per turn. So you're probably not going to get the full value out of both of these cards. You'll probably get a lot of value out of 1 in each of the games that you play. But honestly, I just take off Black Market Slice tool here. I have seen the power of Lat's Razzie and Asajj Ventress. It's not actually my preferred build for Asajj Ventress, but I know that it's a very powerful thing. And in a game where you have an ace and 2 large ships with a combined hit points of, what have we got here, 9, 10, and 4, that's 23 points. If you have one of those ships with the bulk of the hit points on that one ship, be very, very defensive with a 3 dice attack, it's going to make it very difficult for your opponent to profitably make their way through your list. And that's why I think you should basically just bank on Lat's Razzie. Don't worry about the Black Market Slicer tools. It might be useful in some situations, but Lat's Razzie is definitely the better option here. And with the point you save on Black Market Slicer tools, you could consider changing adaptability to Veteran Instincts. You could consider a 1-point illicit upgrade like Inertial Dampeners. I love Inertial Dampeners. It's one of my favorite illicit cards. Or you could even consider Contraband Cybernetics. Now, just hear me out on this one, guys. I really, really like what this card's doing. I've played around with it myself, and on Asajj Ventress, it's a very interesting card. It seems to be a card that is very explosive when you use it, but you have to time it perfectly, and it won't come up all the time, but it can lead to some very powerful plays. And I think it's going to be, in general, more impactful than the Black Market Slice tools. Black Market Slice tools aren't bad. Sometimes they're going to help you swing a game, but it's going to be at the detriment of one of your other upgrade cards, which is why I kind of err on the side of not taking it. Alright, next up we have a list by Meathead Jonah. Love the screen name, dude. 98 points, we have Asajj, Guri, and a Black Sun Enforcer. Asajj has Veteran Instincts, Lat's Razzie, Shadowcaster, Black Market Slicer tools. Guri has Calculation, Star Viper Mark II and Auto Thrusters, and the Black Sun Enforcer has Star Viper Mark II and Auto Thrusters. Now obviously we just covered this, I'm not really a fan of Lat's Razzie and the Black Market Slicer tools together on the same ship. I think you want to sort of go for one or the other. Keep Lat's Razzie in my opinion and go for something like Contraband Cybernetics. You could consider putting in Gyroscopic Targeting, which is really, really useful if you want to get Asajj's ability working turn after turn really effectively. A lot of people I see actually criticize this card because it sort of telegraphs your next move, but if you find you're in that situation, you can sort of use Asajj as a zoner, meaning, yes, I'm telegraphing what I'm doing, but I'm making sure that your opponent is being punished for trying to counterfly you. They're being punished for flying into these zones that you don't want them to fly into. And it can actually make a really good game of cat and mouse. So by dropping off the black market style stall and putting on gyroscopic targeting, you got up to 99 points. And I still think that's really strong. I think that's something that you should consider. Now, moving down the list, we have Guri, Calculation, Starbupper Mark II, and Auto Thrusters. This is a nice basic build for Guri. I don't love seeing Guri without Virago, to be honest. Having fire control systems or advanced sensors just feels so strong with this pilot, especially when her ability is all about positioning. Advanced sensors means you can do that disgustingly curved barrel roll before or after you move, and the positioning ability of that is just incredible. The downside of that is she's only pilot skill 5, so yes, you usually can't do it after your opponent, but it's still something worth considering. I'm not quite sure how you quite fit it in the list. It would cost you another 4 points for that combination, but it's worth thinking about if you can, say, shave points off somewhere else in the list. Calculation makes perfect sense, but I'm not a huge fan of the card because it's a replacement effect for your focus tokens. The problem is if Guri's at range 1 shooting and you have 4 red dice, it's actually a pretty high chance. A lot of the time you'll get even more than one focus result. And that means you've basically got to choose the best of 2 possible situations, but calculation isn't always the best thing. I mean, imagine if you roll 3 or 4 eyeball results. Calculation is not going to be your friend then. In that case, it's actually a wasted EPT. And from that point of view, I would consider a few other things. I mean, again, I know it's a massive point sink, but if you can consider push the limits or something like that, you're going to have a lot of fun with it. Even something like crack shot if you want to go a bit crazier. I think crack shot for a 1-point offensive EPT, it's in some situations actually just better than calculation. It's not a card that I love. I find calculation is a better card if crits are important to your build for some reason. I know it makes sense with Guri because she gets focus tokens for free, so it's easy to use calculation, but I just don't think the value is there. Now moving on, we have the Black Sun Enforcer, and I'm not a fan of this. I realise it's the cheapest Starbupper you can take, but I just feel like it's overcosted. Even with the point reduction of Starbupper Mark II, this card is basically dead on arrival. It's a card that has been made irrelevant by the newer cards that have come out. We now have the Black Sun Assassin, which is just straight up a much better option if you want a generic Starbupper. I know you can't field it in this list because you don't have any room, but I just think for the 24 points you've invested here, it's not going to be your best friend. If you want to invest in the low 20s, you could think about a quad jumper, a Y-wing. There's a lot of other options, which I know you want 2 Starbuppers in this list. I can kind of see where you're going with that, but I just don't think the value is here. I think the Black Sun Enforcer just doesn't represent what it once used to. In fact, you know what? To be honest, I don't think it actually ever represented good value. This is not worth 25 points, and I don't think it ever has been. I know that sounds really, really harsh, but I played this card a lot when it came out and just found it thoroughly disappointing. Guri, on the other hand, even though she cost 5 more points, is way, way better value. So maybe think about the bottom end of this list, cutting out this Black Sun Enforcer and putting in something that's going to give you a bit more love. It means you have to fly 3 different ships, but maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you can actually get a bit more balance out of this list. Give yourself another option that helps you adapt to different situations. I just think overall that's going to be better. However, having said all that, I like the combination of Asajj and Guri. I think Guri makes a good sort of quasi-ace that can work alongside Asajj and help capitalize off her ability. So from that point of view, I'd keep working on this, keep trying to find a way to make this really powerful. I just don't think the Black Sun Enforcer as your 3rd ship is the right option. Alright, and the last list we have here is 4 Viper Shadows by Blue Wolf Howlin for 100 points. This has Guri, Asajj, and a Jakku Gunrunner. Guri has Intensity, Virago, Starbupper Mark II, Fire Control Systems, and Auto Thrusters. Asajj has Veteran Instincts, Dengar, Engine Upgrade, Shadowcaster. Jakku Gunrunner has Intelligence Agents and Space Dark Tractor Array. And Blue Wolf Howlin, you and I are obviously on the same wavelength because I love this list. It's doing so many things that I as a player really enjoy. I just get the impression that you must basically like doing the same things I like doing. This is my preferred way of flying Asajj. To be honest, I prefer gyroscopic targeting over the engine upgrades, but I understand the arguments for and against. The only thing I'd change in this list is take out engine upgrades and put in gyroscopic targeting, and use those final 2 points to put in pattern analyzer on the Jakku Gunrunner, making sure it can space tug tractor array after you do those reverse maneuvers. It's also worth pointing out that Blue with Howland, I saw the other day that you actually reposted this list in one of my videos, and that is exactly the changes you made. So again, you're obviously on the same wavelengths as me. You're kind of going for the same things that I like. One more thing that I really want to say about this list is you put on intensity in Guri, and this is something I've been really curious about. Intensity seems really strong on Guri because Guri has a way of generating the tokens to reflip it and keep it active turn after turn after turn. Intensity is a card that gives you a free focus or evade token after you do a boost or barrel roll, but when you do that you have to exhaust it, flipping the card face down. You can then flip it face up again at the end of your turn if you spend a focus or evade token. So the fact that Guri is giving you tokens at the start of combat makes a lot of sense. You could very easily get 2 tokens on Guri at the start of combat, and at the end of your turn you probably haven't used at least one of those tokens unless Guri was focus-fied. And even if you had to spend both of those tokens and you don't have anything to use to flip it face up, it's an option that you had, and you got this extra bit of utility out of the card, and if you have to work to flip face up again, that's fine. It's options, and options is never a bad thing in gaming. You've also got fire control systems, so Guri is super efficient. She's getting focus, evade, and target locks all very straightforward. Auto thrusters means she should be durable enough to last at least a few turns. Unfortunately, I have seen in a few different games Guri just dying very, very quickly, but if you're careful enough, you can really make Guri do a lot of work. In this list, I think you really want Asajj to be taking the brunt of your opponent's attack straight up, and then you charge in with Guri and that Jakku Gunrunner, and you just get all that control factor from Asajj and the Gunrunner, and you get a lot of firepower from Asajj again and Guri. This list looks like, if it's done well, it'll be really hard to fly against, and should be able to beat your opponent in the damage race. And to be honest, I like this so much, I think I'm actually going to have to try it in a bat rep at some stage. So next time I get a chance to play against Justin, I'm actually going to use this list because I just like it. I like it a lot. It's got a lot of different things that I've been wanting to play around with for ages. Asajj and a quad jumper is something I've done before, but alongside Guri, that's something I've never experimented with. I think that could be a lot of fun. So Blue with Howland, thank you so much. I am actually going to try and play this and see how it goes. So thank you for that suggestion. And thank you to everyone else who submitted lists. If you'd like for me to have a look at your list in one of these videos, just simply copy and paste it into the comment section of one of these videos, and I will save it for a later review video. Anyway guys, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, like the Facebook page and the Twitter, and I will catch you later.